Welcome to the Wine Yogi. I'm your guide, Crystal, and I'm here to help you navigate your way through the wonderful world of wine and all its heady associates, craft beers, spirits, and gourmet foods, with the knowledge of a sommelier, the sometimes calm patience of a yoga instructor, and of course the wacky humor of a former Air Force pilot, stay-at-home mama, and a girl raised in the South. So let's get chatting about wine. So welcome to this episode of The Wine Yogi. Today I just wanted to briefly discuss a recent experience I had in a Pilates reformer class, just to offer something that, perhaps yoga isn't for you. It's not something you've tried it, and maybe it's a little too much on the spiritual side, or the names of the postures are confusing. If that is a problem, I would suggest you maybe take a look at a different studio. There are a lot of different options out there for yoga with folks that don't use Sanskrit words and terms that are confusing, and also that tend to avoid more of the spiritual side of yoga. But if maybe you just don't have that available and you need something where you are engaging with an instructor, because perhaps following along on YouTube or in your own home is too much of a challenge, simply because of physical limitations, or again, just not having that baseline of what is expected in terms. It's difficult when you're first starting a yoga practice out. If you don't know what the body's posture should be, if you're just watching it on a videotape, I'm sorry, I just showed my age, on a video. I still have some VHS tapes somewhere. I don't have a VHS player, but I have VHS tapes still in this house somewhere. I'm sure you do too. Eventually I'll KonMari those things, but anyway, I digress. It is a challenge, however, for some folks, just because you've never done it before. And so it's very, very hard to get the proper spinal alignment, for example, or to understand, what do you actually mean when you're saying externally rotate my femur bone or my thigh bone? So those kinds of things can be intimidating. They can overwhelm and discourage folks. So if a group yoga session or private yoga session with a yoga guide is just not available, or it's just not your thing, because there's plenty of folks that, give it the old college try and say, not my thing. And I totally honor that. I wanted to maybe offer something very similar that can still provide a lot of the benefits that yoga can provide, especially folks who are older and maybe experiencing some physical limitations, whether it's hip, spine, knee issues, ankle, foot issues, arthritis, just kind of those general joint issues where range of motion and mobility are a challenge. And that's Pilates. Now, there are lots of different types and styles of Pilates, just like there are lots of different styles of yoga. But I just wanted to briefly touch on different Pilates opportunities and why Pilates may be something that, if you have it available to you nearby, or even if it's one of those things that you decide to pick up at your local Target or Walmart, a DVD on Pilates, this may be a better option for you. First of all, with the class that I did yesterday, it was the first time I ever used reformer. And when you actually Google Pilates, you'll see these reformer machines, and they look very, very complex and intimidating, and they are. They're spring-loaded machines that use system of pulleys and springs, where you're using the body itself, the weight of the body, to actually provide the resistance. But you also have specific springs that are in there that can then also add on to that resistance. But we're not talking like 250 pounds. It's not a huge amount of resistance. It's just enough to give the body and the muscles that challenge. So Pilates itself was created at the turn of the 20th century, early 20th century, by Joseph Pilates, who was from Germany. His father was a gymnast, but his mother was into more natural healing alternatives. So he kind of grew up around the importance of body movement, spinal alignment, and what that does for the movement of lymph, fluid throughout the body, getting rid of toxins, and essentially how to move the body properly, how we are meant to move. Because in our Western culture especially, we sit in chairs where our legs are extended below our sacrum. This often puts an unnatural curve into the low back through the lumbar spine. It also can affect the hips. If you notice, and I've mentioned this before, in cultures where they tend to sit on the ground, sit cross-legged, they don't sit in chairs with backs. I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and when you go into a Japanese home, for example, you sit on tatami. They don't have couches and lazy boys and things like that we tend to have in Western culture. When they go to the bathroom, their toilets are not things that you sit upon. You squat. Sorry, maybe TMI, but it's true. It was always an interesting challenge when you would go to places where they did not have Western toilets. And trust me, I got very good at finding the symbol for a Western toilet when I was out in public when I lived in Japan, because that was not something I grew up doing. But in most cultures throughout the world, this is how they relieve themselves. So they're squatting. When they sit down to socialize, eat dinner, whatever it is, they are sitting on the floor. And they may have a cushion underneath them, but they don't sit the way we do in chairs with the legs below the hips. And thus, most of these other cultures that tend to have this more natural approach to sitting, for example, tend to have less back pain. Now, I am sure that as that things are changing, times change, culture changes, and you're starting to see more and more of that influence, even just with riding in subways or driving a car, that may no longer hold true. But for the most part, low back issues seem to be something that plague our culture, our societies in the West, where we tend to, again, choose a lifestyle that maybe is not meant for the way the body should naturally move. And I'm not judging that, because I'm sitting in a chair right now and I love my lazy boy. So I'm not giving that up. But there are some things that just over time have impacted us in a negative way. Now, what Pilates, his inspiration that I have read in several different articles was during World War I. He was actually a prisoner. He was a prisoner in World War I. And so because of limited means of exercise, limited equipment available, he started developing this routine of exercises that he and his fellow prisoners could do to maintain their health. And he definitely believed that there was a clear connection between the physical and mental health, that when we are physically feeling good, our mental outlook improves. And especially in this day and age where more and more people are overwhelmed with worry, stress, anxiety for any host of reasons, where we feel isolated and alone, oftentimes turning inward. One of the first things to fall off in a lot of the human experience is that physical movement. And when we begin to withdraw because of whatever we have going on that is causing all of the mental anguish, one of the first things to drop off is actually getting the body moving, which gets the lymph flowing, which allows the organs to eliminate those toxins. And then, we've all been there. That leads to drinking a bottle of wine or staying up way too late at night on your social media, maybe binging on potato chips or a pint of ice cream, and then the guilt that's associated with those poor decisions, just it begins to feed upon itself. So Joseph Pilates, his approach was that it is better to move and keep the body moving, improving that physical health. And in connection with that, the mind will also begin to clear. And so he developed the Pilates method, and he used a lot of interesting apparatus, and that's what he called it, this equipment. And it was meant to accelerate the strengthening of the body, but also to help assist in stretching. And that was what was really cool about my experience with the reformer. I'm taking my mom back, as a matter of fact. She has some degenerative spine issues and knee issues and everything like that, but she really wants, especially she's approaching 70, she's wanting to work out and introduce resistance training. And so Pilates is a fantastic method to do that. And the reformer itself, you look at the machine, you're like, whoa, my God. But you have an instructor there to guide you through it and to teach you how to use it. So just like maybe with the first time you set foot in a gym and you look at all that weightlifting equipment, you're like, I'm intimidated. It's kind of like you've got all of that equipment in one machine, and you've got somebody there guiding you through how to use it in a safe manner. And what I liked about it is it's pretty easy to move and get things set up. And it's all about my body. So I kind of felt like I was constantly in control. And so the first thing that he created was, it is the Universal Reformer. So now just known as the Reformer. But it has the class that I took actually has some of the other things that he came up with. So these different chairs, spine correctors, things like that. But you may also be very familiar with more of the mat Pilates, and that may be what is offered at your local gym, where you have the spring-loaded rings, the resistance bands, perhaps blocks and bolsters. And so what happened when he took his method away from using apparatus and took it to the mat is you started to see a lot of influence of dancers, and a lot of the more modern Pilates has been influenced by several dancers that came to Joseph Pilates and began as his first students. One was his niece, and these dancers that brought some of their background to it, you'll find that if you've ever taken a ballet class, for example, there is a lot of terminology, postures, and positions, especially with the feet and the legs. You'll often hear first position, second position. So even if you're not a ballet dancer, it's pretty simple movement. It does focus on spinal alignment. It focuses on core strength, and it focuses on breathing, but it does not have the meditation side that yoga has, because yoga has all of those things too. But what's wonderful about Pilates is there is a lot of similarity to yoga in terms of where the focus is on alignment of the body and working with the breath. They don't want you holding your breath. They'll get on you if you're holding your breath. And in fact, Joseph Pilates spends an immense amount of time talking about the importance of breathing. He refers to it as the blood circulation and bodily house cleaning. And because breath gets the blood circulating, gets things moving, and that's how we expel all of those toxins that build up, leading to inflammation, leading to discomfort, injury, dis-ease. It's interesting because if you think of the word, and I say this often, so disease, right? If you break it apart, it's dis-ease. So it's to not be comfortable. So when your body is in a element of dis-ease, whether it's pain, inflammation, what have you, that can eventually lead to disease, because the body itself is indicating to you that something is wrong. And if we just ignore it and we don't address it, it can lead to other more serious things down the road. So it's just, I thought it was an interesting play on words. And so I often say that if you've ever listened to some of my meditations, that's why I'm saying dis-ease like that. Specifically not saying disease, although to me they are related. But back to Pilates. So you do have a tremendous emphasis on breath, whether it's a mat class that you're taking, which the other nice thing that most people find about Pilates mat classes is they are often done on thicker mats. So you maybe have gone to a yoga studio or even gone and bought a yoga mat yourself, and they tend to be 3 to 5 millimeters thick. And that's not very thick. Most of my yoga mats actually are pretty thick because I tend to look for the 7 to 9 millimeter. They're much more expensive, and they're heavier to haul around. And definitely my travel yoga mats, and I have 3 travel yoga mats, they are not super thick like that, but my regular practice yoga mats are. But most yoga studios have thinner yoga mats. And so for folks that have physical ailment and actual joint pain and stiffness and it just hurts to get down on the floor, by having that nice thick exercise mat, I mean, it is pretty thick, the Pilates mats may offer you a level of comfort that will enable you to actually complete a practice. And eventually maybe you can go back and try yoga. But I know for some folks that is also a struggle and a challenge. If this is a challenge for you, it's always easy just to double up, triple up your mats too. The problem with that is they can't slide on one another. So that's always a challenge. But work with your yoga guides and instructors, and they can help you with padding by using bolsters and blankets as well. But in Pilates, just know that most of the mats that they're going to have at a Pilates studio or in a Pilates class are going to be on that thicker side. They're more like the exercise mats you might see for doing crunches at your local gym. So Pilates focuses on breath. Definitely it is about mindfulness and focus. So the instructors are going to guide you to the muscle groups that you're engaging, whether it's bringing the belly button in to engage the core, whether it's squeezing your glutes. They are going to use terms like that are going to be very familiar. Some yoga guides, I often prompt that in my yoga classes, but not everybody does. So just rest assured that in a Pilates class, that's the kind of instruction you're going to be given. They are also going to focus on the control of your body. And Joseph Pilates was very, very insistent on the idea of muscle control. And so when you are working against gravity, when you're using the reformer machine with certain springs and your body weight, each movement is taken slowly and with precision. And once you have the movement established and are doing it correctly, the instructor may then cue you to pick up the pace. But it's important when you're first learning that you're doing each movement with precision and control. And then, yes, the other aspects like that are similar to yoga, there is a natural centering approach, and it's about the core muscle groups. So whether it's the front of the body or the back of the body, and it's known as in Pilates as the powerhouse. So this is your abdominal muscles, your back muscles, both low, middle, and upper, getting into the hips, buttocks, and thighs. And so that is why Pilates is so wonderful for people who maybe have back issues, because what you're doing is not only are you introducing range of motion, whether it's to your hips, the thighs, to the back, but you're also starting to build up strength because, again, we sit in chairs, so our back muscles tend to weaken over time unless we're actively working on them in the gym or working out. And so what Pilates, the Pilates approach is we have to start restoring that. And especially I like it because, and I was talking with the instructor, you see all of these younger folks that are just all about, no pain, no gain. I'm just going to keep knocking out all of these intense workouts. And eventually that catches up with the body. I was the same way in my 20s. I used to love running long distance. That was the best workout ever. But my body can't handle that anymore. And things begin to break down as we age. And it's just a fact of life. I have several friends. One is my spirit animal. She got her splits back at 50. And so I've got a year and a half left. I'm working on it though. But it's amazing what she can do. But not everybody is built that way. Whether it's genetics, choices, injuries that have happened for whatever reason. It just, not everyone's built that way. So that's what's awesome about the Pilates approach, is that it is going back to the basics. It's going back to that powerhouse to begin to build from that powerhouse so that you can then begin to increase your overall workouts. So they also, in Pilates class, just like with a yoga class, there is going to be a flow. Now, this is a series of movements and exercises that you're going to be doing. There's no breaks in between. It will get the heart rate up, so consider it kind of low impact cardio as well. But again, as with a yoga practice, Pilates instructors are very keen on what their students need. So if at any point it becomes too much, they're going to let you know. You can just slow it down. You can bring things back down. You can take it easy. And it is one of those kinds of classes where you just have to say, hey, because it's a limited number. If you're doing a reformer class, there's maybe 6 to 8 reformer machines in these classes, typically. And that's because, a safety issue because of moving the springs and everything like that and getting everything set up. You need that smaller student-teacher ratio. In mat Pilates classes, there will definitely be more students in those classes because the apparatus are much more limited. You may have the weighted Pilates balls or an actual yoga ball that you might be using, or like I said, the spring-loaded ring or Pilates strap. So there's not a safety risk associated with it when you are using a machine. But the instructors are going to be keying in on whether you're allowing alignment to slip and whether your posture is beginning to suffer because you're trying to muscle through it. And they're going to cue that for you. And they're going to make sure that you're being safe in your body. And if they don't, then maybe that's not the Pilates class for you. As I mentioned, they are very, very keen on that posture alignment. And so even while you're going through your flow, they're not doing it with you. They're looking at your alignment, making sure that you are safe. And like I said, if they're not doing that in the Pilates classes that you've attended or that you're taking, maybe it's time to look for a different instructor, because they should really be zoning in on that. That is all about being precise, that keeps you safe. And then they are going to also encourage you, because of the focus on alignment, they're going to remind you that these other muscle groups should be relaxed. Can you keep the neck relaxed? The neck shouldn't be involved in this particular exercise. The instructor actually told me that yesterday because we were working on core and glutes, the powerhouse. And he's like, I struggle with my students wanting to, in this particular movement, to engage that muscle, the neck. And you can start to see the neck flare out because they're using those muscles in this particular posture, which they should not. And so they will key in on the areas that are supposed to be relaxed and the places that are supposed to be engaged, so you don't have to worry about it. Even on the Pilates videos I've used on DVD at home, the instructors are cueing that. And the difference between that and yoga is, a lot of times with yoga, it is more about that mindfulness. Some yoga classes, you don't get the meditative side, and that's awesome. I tend to focus my meditations more on just kind of noticing the breath and that breathing aspect. And I tend to stay away from more of the deep meditation, like exploring feelings and how you are letting them go. It's more about using the breath to relax the body. But not all yoga classes are like that. And I definitely think my approach to yoga has been heavily influenced by mat Pilates. And now that I've taken this reformer class, I'm going to sign up to take more. I think it's going to be further influenced by the reformer aspect, because I do teach a stretch and strength class, which is heavily influenced by Pilates. And so I want to be able to bring that to students, because I want yoga accessible to everybody. But I also realize that not everybody is comfortable with yoga as a practice because of the woo-woo, as my yoga mentor calls it, the woo-woo side of things. And that's totally okay as well. I think Pilates is an amazing alternative or complement to a yoga practice. So if you've decided that yoga is not for you, I totally get that and honor that. But if you are still looking for something similar because you maybe enjoyed certain aspects of yoga, then Pilates may be that perfect answer for you. So just to kind of, if you've ever noticed that a lot, Pilates has its own, it's kind of like CrossFit and bar. Pilates has its own proselytizers out there. It is, it's one of those exercise movements that some swear by. And I definitely, mat Pilates, if I was going to get on my mat, typically I was going to do a yoga practice. But now that I've been teaching for over almost 2 years now, a stretch and strength class, using resistance bands, using a lot of Pilates props on a mat, essentially mat Pilates, but maybe we move a little more and dance a little more. I definitely am starting to enjoy the Pilates as well. And I just signed up to do this intro to reformer because it's always intrigued me. And I know Pilates is good for low back pain, and I've been encouraged to do Pilates. But what I really enjoyed about it, honestly, was there were things that it allowed me to do that are going to translate to my yoga mat. There was one particular exercise that we did at the very end. So my core is already fired. My back, the powerhouse muscle groups of abdominal, back, thighs, and hips, glutes, they were all fired already. They had already had a great workout. But we get on this chair, and I'm standing on this spring. So I got my toes, the ball of my feet, of both feet, on this spring. And I'm bracing my hands on this chair, and I am working press handstands. I'm not pressing up into a handstand, but I am working the very beginning movement of a press handstand. And that has been one goal in my life, is I want to be able to do a press handstand. And I'm super excited because I know that by working that exercise, because at first I'm like, I can't do this. And then as the instructor started to guide me on how to roll through my back and using my abdominal muscles, all of a sudden my feet started to rise up, and I could feel that. And I expected today to feel pretty beat up. I expected to be sore. I expected to kind of feel like I'd been hit by a Mack truck. And as with my yoga practice, what I am stoked about is that I woke up this morning feeling pretty awesome. And in fact, my neck has been pretty stiff for the past few days. After that Pilates reformer class, it was lovely. My neck started to loosen up. It is still pretty stiff today, but all in all, I feel extremely loose. I actually feel pretty strong. I definitely have that sense in my shoulders, between my shoulder blades, that those muscles worked out, but it wasn't to the point of, oh my gosh, I can't even move today. Because there have been some workouts where I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to sit down to go to the bathroom because my thighs are on fire. So I think Pilates, especially if you are older and maybe experiencing some discomfort from trying to get back to a workout regimen, or maybe, again, yoga isn't for you, so you want to try something that has a similar approach that will reap similar benefits, especially when you're talking about spine health, joint health. I think Pilates is a fantastic option. And I encourage you to take a look around and look for Pilates studios in your local area. And certainly check out if you belong to a gym. Most gyms offer some form of mat Pilates as a class. So just take a look and see what you have available. And if not, there are several opportunities out on the internet and DVD wise that you can certainly pick up and give those a try. Some of them you'll have to get a little bit of equipment, minimal though. It's minimal equipment needs. You don't really necessarily need, it's like yoga. If so long as you have a mat that doesn't slip and slide, so it gives you a steady base, perhaps a pillow and some blankets, maybe a strap. Honestly, you can do a mat Pilates with just those simple things, much like what you do with the yoga practice. So I hope this maybe helps offer another idea for you to consider in your exercise regimen. And let me know what you think by either leaving a comment here at Ladies Chit Chat Club, or go find me at IamTheWineYogi.com, or I Am The Wine Yogi on Instagram. At Twitter, I am at The Wine Yogi, and I'm at The Wine Yogi on Facebook. So you can find me in lots of different places out there in the interwebs. And I just also want to leave with this one final thought. If you've listened to this long, please try to be kind to one another. There's a lot of things going on out in this world that add to the anxiety and the frustration and the anger and depression and stress. Whether it's the cancel culture that's happening, or people that are digging into other people's past to bring up things that were done 30 years ago when we were all maybe young and dumb, or at least in the stupidity of youth. I just invite you to please be kind to one another. I know I did a lot of stupid things in my youth. I would hate for anything to come up that I did a long time ago to come back up and to smack me in the face, because it's just what a world we're living in. And so it can start with you just by being kind to yourself, being kind to your family, being kind to your friends, and maybe trying to show a little compassion and kindness for even those strangers, those people that maybe you just come across on the street. I'm trying to do it too. I've gotten honked at and flipped off and treated with a lack of kindness by complete strangers a lot lately. And I am just trying my best to smile and to be polite and to be kind, and to not let their anger and their vitriol and their toxic poison me, because it doesn't serve me. And so we're getting ready. I cannot believe it is almost October, which means it's almost November. And I am going to be doing my gratitude challenge again. If you have been listening to this podcast, it's been over a year now. Thank you. If you are one of my one or two listeners out there, please download. Get your friends to download, even if they don't listen. But we are going to be doing another gratitude challenge coming up here in November. I'm going to have a calendar where we're going to do different challenges every day. So I'm pretty excited about that. Got some fun wine podcasts in the hopper, but I've been really focused this month on self-care and self-help. And so I hope you enjoyed this particular discussion on Pilates. Go give it a try. It's worth it. You'll thank me later. So until next time, cheers and namaste. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Wine Yogi. To hear more episodes from this podcast or other podcasts at the Ladies Chit Chat Club, please be sure to check us out at ladieschitchatclub.com. You can also find us on the iHeartRadio app, iTunes, and Spotify. Ladies Chit Chat Club also now has its own app, so be sure to go and download it to your phone today. Until next time, cheers and namaste.